For the first time in history, Earth stood together. Borders had fallen. Wars had ended, and leaders of every nation signed a single promise called the One Earth Accord. It was a day humanity had dreamed of for centuries. And it finally came. Cities around the world glowed with light. Fireworks exploded in the skies, painting them in red, gold, and silver. Families filled the streets, waving flags of peace. Music thundered from every corner, drums beating like one great heartbeat. People cried tears of joy, holding strangers as if they had always been friends. The world had become one. Children danced in the streets, laughing as the skies above lit up brighter than ever. Towers shined with messages of hope. One voice, one earth, one future. For the first time, humanity believed nothing could divide them again, but in the quiet corners, far away from the celebrations, something strange was happening. In the silence of the desert, an observatory stood with its antennas pointed toward the heavens. While the world celebrated, its machines picked up a sound, a faint hum hidden deep within the static of space. It was small at first, almost invisible, but it repeated itself with perfect rhythm, like a knock on a locked door. Dr. Amina, the head scientist, leaned forward, her heart pounding. The world outside was cheering, but in her headphones she heard something that froze her blood. It was not noise. It was a signal. She whispered to herself, her voice shaking. I still remember that night. When the world celebrated, and the stars suddenly grew silent. That night, while humanity believed they had entered a golden age, the universe seemed to be watching. The lights above sparkled, but there was no warmth in their glow, only a strange, heavy stillness, as if the galaxy itself was holding its breath. Something had awakened, and though the people of Earth did not yet know it, their unity had stirred the attention of something far beyond the stars. The celebration of unity had not yet ended. Streets were still glowing with lanterns, and fireworks painted the night sky in colors. People sang in joy, children waved flags, and families believed a new golden age had begun. But while the world danced, far away in a lonely observatory at the edge of the desert, a different kind of light was flickering. Inside the control room, screens glowed with green lines of data. Scientists stared in silence, their hands frozen over keyboards. Something unusual had appeared in their instruments, something too perfect to be an accident. The sound was faint, a steady pulse hidden in the static of space. It wasn't random. It carried rhythm, almost like a heartbeat. Dr. Amina, the head of the station, whispered, This cannot be natural." Her voice trembled as the pulse repeated itself with exact timing. Each note seemed to rise and fall like a voice speaking from beyond the stars. When the news reached the capital, the world exploded with excitement. Headlines spread across every screen. First contact? Humanity is not alone. In cities, crowds gathered to watch the live broadcasts. Giant screens replayed the strange sound, the low hum echoing like a cosmic drum. Children laughed and clapped, believing it was a greeting. Poets called it the Song of the Stars. For the first time in history, Earth felt smaller and greater at the same time. But as the world cheered, the scientists grew more uneasy. The signal had stopped. No farewell, no explanation, only silence. The observatory, once filled with the sound of a living galaxy, now echoed with emptiness. Dr. Amina checked the instruments again and again, but the hum had vanished as if it had never existed. One young researcher leaned closer to the dark screen and whispered, This was not a greeting. It was a warning. No one wanted to believe him, but deep inside, a cold fear began to grow. The night outside looked darker than usual, and the stars above seemed to shine with a quiet, heavy watchfulness. The world had waited centuries for a voice from the stars. Now it had come and gone in less than a day. After the signal ended, the world tried to return to normal, but something was different. In observatories across the planet, scientists began to notice something no one expected. The usual noise of the universe, the background hum, the crackle of distant stars, the bursts of energy from faraway galaxies, was gone. The equipment did not show errors. The universe itself had gone quiet. Dr. Amina stood in the desert observatory, headphones pressed tightly to her ears. She had spent her life listening to the sounds of the cosmos, but now there was nothing. No radio waves, no pulses from spinning stars, no whisper of cosmic wind. Only silence. At first, the silence seemed almost peaceful, like the universe was holding its breath. But as the days passed, fear spread. Astronomers from Asia, Europe, and America confirmed the same thing. The galaxy was no longer speaking. Ordinary people noticed it too. In small villages, farmers gazed at the night sky and said the stars looked weaker, as if their light was fading. In big cities, power would flicker during the night, and people claimed the air felt heavy, like a storm was waiting to break. Children who once pointed to the stars with wonder now asked their parents, "Why does the sky look sick?" The media tried to calm the public, calling it a temporary cosmic event, but whispers moved faster than news. Old stories began to surface, myths from forgotten tribes who spoke of a time when the stars stopped singing. Some called it the night of the great silence. Others believed it was the sign of something watching. Inside the United Earth Council, leaders argued. Some said the signal had triggered a chain reaction in space. Others believed the silence was not a natural event at all. One official slammed his hand on the table and said, "The galaxy is not quiet. It is hiding." That sentence spread like fire. Hiding from what? Who or what could silence the voices of the stars? The world, once united in joy, now trembled in fear. And above them, the night sky continued to grow darker, as if something unseen was slowly swallowing the universe. The silence of the galaxy spread like an invisible shadow, and humanity searched for answers. Scientists studied every detail of the lost signal. Leaders held secret meetings, and ordinary people prayed under dim skies. But the truth did not come from the stars. It came from the past. In a hidden corner of the world archives, an old historian named Elias discovered something chilling. Buried inside dusty books and broken scrolls were records of ancient civilizations, civilizations that had once thrived on Earth long before written history. Each of them had one thing in common. They all wrote about the silence of the heavens. Elias read aloud to the council. When the people spoke as one voice, the sky grew dark. When their hearts beat as one, the stars turned away. The words were written thousands of years ago by tribes who should have known nothing about galaxies or signals. Yet their warnings were clear. Every time a civilization united, it vanished soon after, leaving only ruins behind. The council dismissed the findings as superstition. Leaders stood before cameras, smiling, telling humanity not to fear. They said the silence was temporary, a cosmic mystery that would soon pass. But behind closed doors, their faces turned pale. They remembered the signal. They remembered the sudden stop. In quiet places, whispers spread. Some people believed Earth's unity had drawn attention from something greater, something that hunted silence. Dr. Amina could not sleep. She sat in the observatory alone, lights humming above her, the desert wind shaking the walls. She thought about the words Elias had read. When the people spoke as one voice, the sky grew dark, and she realized with horror it was true. Humanity had just united for the first time in history, and right after the stars began to fall silent. The celebration that once brought hope now felt like a curse. The night sky outside her window seemed emptier, and she felt At first, the silence was only soundless. The universe had stopped speaking, but its stars still burned above Earth. People told themselves there was nothing to fear. But then, the lights began to vanish. It started far away, with stars at the edge of the galaxy. Telescopes captured strange images, whole clusters of stars going dark in a single night. One day they burned brightly, the next day they were gone, as if an invisible hand had reached across space and smothered their light. At first, the news called it natural extinction, a rare cosmic event. But as days passed, more stars disappeared. Entire constellations, once used by sailors and dreamers, were erased from the sky. Children who looked up at night asked their parents, "Where did the stars go?" But no parent could answer. Dr. Amina sat in the observatory, her eyes wide with disbelief. She had studied the universe all her life, but she had never seen such silence. The stars weren't dying naturally. They were being erased. One by one, panic spread across Earth. Some blamed the signal, saying humanity should never have answered it. Others whispered that unity itself had cursed them. The One Earth Accord, once seen as the birth of peace, was now seen by many as the beginning of their end. Religions revived old prophecies, warning of a dark curtain that would fall over the world. Governments struggled to keep order as riots broke out in cities. People screamed in the streets, demanding answers that no leader could give. One night, Elias the historian stood before a small group and read from another ancient record. His voice shook as he spoke. "The stars do not fall. They are silenced. The silence spreads. And when it reaches the world of man, their voices are taken too." The people listening trembled. The prophecy matched perfectly with what they now witnessed. Above them, the sky continued to empty. Every night, fewer stars remained, until the heavens looked like a broken mirror, pieces of light surrounded by a growing sea of darkness. Humanity, once proud of its unity, now stared at the night sky with dread. They realized they were not alone. Something was moving through the galaxy, and it was getting closer. The world had reached its breaking point. The night sky was almost empty now, with only a few faint stars still shining. Fear had become the language of humanity. People no longer celebrated their unity. Now they clung to it as their only defense. The United Earth Council gathered for one final decision. Their faces were pale, their voices weak. No one spoke of hope anymore. They all knew the silence was spreading toward Earth. Dr. Amina stood in the great chamber, her hands trembling as she addressed the leaders. "If we remain quiet, we will vanish like the others. If we speak, perhaps, something will hear us." The council voted, and the choice was made. Humanity would send one last message into the universe, a signal louder and stronger than any before, a message of defiance. In the largest broadcasting station ever built, giant antennas turned toward the sky. Lights blinked, machines roared to life, and a deep hum filled the air. Around the world, billions watched on screens as humanity's final words were prepared. The message was simple. "We are united. We are here. Do not silence us." The signal was sent. It cut through the darkness of space, racing into the unknown. For hours, humanity waited. People sat in their homes, staring at dark skies. Cities grew quiet. Even the winds seemed to pause. Days passed. Still nothing. The silence remained. Then, on the third night, every screen on Earth suddenly flickered. From the smallest phone to the largest city billboard, all went black. Then, slowly, white letters appeared across the world. "Your voices have been heard. Remain silent." For a moment, time itself seemed frozen. Streets grew quiet, hearts stopped. Children clutched their parents. People dropped to their knees, and leaders stared at the words in disbelief. The message lasted only a few seconds. Then the screens went dark again. But its meaning was clear. Humanity had been warned. The unity they once celebrated now felt like chains. The voice they had raised together had drawn something closer. And the stars above, what few remained, seemed to blink in warning, before more of them began to vanish. Humanity now understood. The silence was not an accident. It was a command. After the warning appeared, Earth was never the same. The streets that once glowed with lights of celebration were now dim and silent. People whispered instead of speaking. Music stopped playing. Even laughter seemed dangerous. Humanity obeyed the command for fear of what might come next. But the silence grew deeper. One by one, satellites stopped working. Radio towers went dark. Even the strongest machines built to send signals into space suddenly failed, as if an invisible hand had crushed their voices. Humanity was cut off, not just from the stars, but from each other. In cities, entire power grids collapsed. Screens went black. Airplanes never took flight again. The world that had once cheered its unity now sat in darkness, waiting for an end they could not fight. Dr. Amina stood outside the silent observatory, staring at the night sky. There were no stars left, not a single point of light. The heavens above had become a vast, empty ocean of black. She whispered to herself, "We are the last, and we are alone." In that moment, humanity finally understood the terrible truth. The galaxy was not filled with life waiting to be discovered. It was filled with silence, because every voice that had ever risen had been silenced. Every civilization that had united, every people that had spoken as one, had been erased. And now it was Earth's turn. The silence was complete. No sound from the stars, no hum from the machines, not even the whisper of the wind. Humanity, once proud and united, now existed in a darkness so deep it felt endless. Their voices had been heard, and now, like the rest of the galaxy, they were gone. The galaxy had fallen silent. Audience message: if you enjoyed this story, please like, subscribe. The galaxy was gone, or at least that was how it felt. No stars, no signals, no signs of life. Only a vast emptiness stretched across the skies, a black ocean swallowing every light. Humanity had fallen silent, forced into a stillness so heavy even the earth beneath their feet seemed afraid to breathe. And yet, silence does not mean nothing. In the ruins of the great observatory, Dr. Amina still lived. She was older now, her hair streaked with gray, her eyes hollow from sleepless nights. But she kept listening. Even though the machines had stopped, even though the skies had gone dark, she pressed her ear against the silence, desperate for anything, a whisper, a crack, a mistake in the stillness. Because she believed something was still out there. The survivors, humanity, had not vanished completely. In the shadows of the fallen cities, small groups survived. Without satellites, phones, or power grids, people returned to firelight. They lived in silence, avoiding loud noises as if the stars themselves could hear them. Villages formed where once there had been glowing cities. Children grew up never knowing the twinkling skies their parents had spoken of. When they asked why the heavens were black, their mothers and fathers told them stories, half hope, half warning. "The stars are sleeping," they would say. "We must stay quiet until they wake." But in secret, the adults knew the truth. The stars were not sleeping. They were gone. Elias, the old historian, had survived as well. His voice, once strong, had grown weak, but he still gathered people around the fire to read from his ancient texts. He spoke of civilizations that had come before, of warnings ignored, and of the silence that consumed them all. Every voice that rose together was silenced, he said softly, staring into the flames. And yet, there must be one who remembers. There must always be one. The forbidden discovery one night, as the winds howled across the desert, Dr. Amina discovered something strange. While repairing an old receiver, she noticed a faint vibration, a trembling hidden beneath the silence. It was not sound, not a signal, but something deeper, like a heartbeat hidden inside a tomb. Her hands shook as she adjusted the controls. For hours she listened, her breath shallow, and then she heard it, a single pulse. It was quiet, weaker than a whisper, but it was there. Thump, thump, thump. A rhythm, a sound that did not belong in the endless silence. Amina's eyes filled with tears. She scribbled notes frantically. Was it a mistake? A machine error? Or was it what she had always believed? Proof that silence was not the end, but a mask. She called Elias and a few survivors to her observatory. They sat in the cold room, wrapped in blankets, listening to the faint heartbeat that echoed through the old equipment. The children leaned forward, their eyes wide with wonder. Elias whispered, "It is not silence. It is hiding something. Something waiting beneath." But others were afraid. They begged Amina to shut the machines down. "Do not answer it," they cried. "Do not wake it. Do not call it here." For days, the debate tore through the survivors. Some wanted to remain silent forever, to live hidden and unseen. Others believed that this pulse was a gift, a chance to break free from the chains of fear. The echo of the fallen one evening When the fires were low and the world outside was dark as ash, Amina made her choice. She recorded a message in the simplest words possible. "We are here. We remember. Who are you?" Her finger hovered above the transmitter. She felt her heartbeat thunder in her chest. The children watched her with hope, while the elders shook their heads in despair. And then she pressed it. The signal shot into the silence. For a moment, there was nothing. The receivers stayed empty. The hum of the machines remained steady. People began to sigh in relief or disappointment, but then something answered. Not words, not a voice, but echoes. The pulse repeated itself, faster, stronger, louder, and within the rhythm, faint shapes appeared on the screens, patterns, signals that looked like fractured messages. As if someone, somewhere, had spoken long ago and their voices had been trapped in the void. The room filled with static, growing louder until everyone covered their ears. Children cried, elders fell to their knees, and Amina's face turned pale. Through the chaos, Elias whispered in awe, "These are not the voices of the living. They are the echoes of the silenced." The warning within. The static finally cleared, and for a single second, a message appeared on the screens. It was written in a language no one knew, but somehow everyone understood it in their hearts. "Do not call out. They are listening." The words burned into the survivors' minds like fire. The message vanished as quickly as it appeared, leaving only the steady heartbeat in the silence. Amina sat frozen, her hand over her mouth. She had wanted hope, but what she had found was terror. The silence was not empty. It was full. Full of something vast, something powerful, something that erased entire galaxies. The pulse was not a friend. It was a trap. The last choice. The survivors split into two groups. Some wanted to destroy the machines and live quietly forever, never daring to whisper to the stars again. Others wanted to keep listening, believing there was still a chance to learn the truth, maybe even fight back. Elias stood before them, his frail body trembling, and said, "Silence has always been our prison, but perhaps inside this prison there is a key. If we remain silent, we will die as forgotten shadows. If we risk a voice, we may live, or we may awaken the darkness sooner." The people argued deep into the night, their voices hushed, their eyes darting nervously toward the black sky. And above them, in the empty heavens, something stirred, a flicker. For the first time in years, a single light appeared in the sky. Not a star, not a planet, something different. It glowed faintly, like a candle in a storm, pulsing with the same rhythm as the heartbeat Amina had heard. The children cheered, pointing upward. The elders wept in fear. Amina's chest tightened as she whispered, "It followed our voice." The survivors realized the truth. The galaxy was not silent because it was dead. It was silent because something demanded it. And now Earth had broken that silence again. The endless night. The light in the sky grew brighter with each passing night, moving closer, pulsing stronger. Some believed it was salvation. Others swore it was the executioner arriving at last. Elias wrote by candlelight, his final words trembling on the page. When humanity united, the galaxy fell silent. But now we speak again, and what comes for us may be the end, or the beginning of something no human can understand. The survivors waited, breathless, as the light drew nearer. The silence was no longer empty. The survivors gathered every night to watch the light grow brighter. It pulsed steadily like a giant heartbeat in the heavens, matching the rhythm that haunted Dr. Amina's machines. At first, it was no larger than a star. Then it grew to the size of a planet, casting pale silver light across the ruined earth. Children whispered in awe. Elders trembled in fear. "Is it hope?" one boy asked, his eyes shining. "No," an old woman muttered. "It is judgment." The descent on the 12th night, the light moved. Slowly it descended from the black ocean of the sky, piercing the silence with its glow. Entire villages watched in breathless terror as the air itself began to vibrate. The ground shook softly, not from sound, but from pressure. like the weight of something enormous pressing down upon the earth. Amina stood outside the observatory, her coat whipping in the cold desert wind. The silver glow painted her face pale, her eyes wide with dread and wonder. She whispered to herself, "It's not a star. It's something else." As the object drew closer, its shape began to form. Not round like a planet, not sharp like a machine, but something in between. It twisted and shifted as though it was alive, made of light and shadow both. Its surface pulsed like veins under skin, beating with that terrible rhythm that echoed in every chest. Thump, thump, thump. The survivors clutched their ears. Some fell to their knees. The sound wasn't in the air. It was inside their bodies, vibrating through their bones. The first contact. Then suddenly the light stopped above Earth. It hung motionless in the sky, vast and silent. For hours nothing happened. People stared, waiting, praying. The silence grew unbearable, and then the world spoke, but not with sound. The survivors heard it in their minds. A voice, vast and cold, not belonging to any language, yet understood by all. "You have broken the silence," children screamed. Elders wept. Some collapsed, clutching their heads as the voice pressed into their skulls like an invisible weight. The survivors did not answer. They could not. Fear gripped their throats like chains. The voice continued, "You are not the first. You are not the last. All who unite must fall silent." Amina, trembling, forced herself to stand. She looked up at the shifting shape in the sky and whispered aloud, "Why? Why silence us? Why erase the stars?" The answer came like a storm. "Because the galaxy must not awaken. There is something greater, something older, that listens beyond. If you call too loudly, it will hear. And when it comes, there will be nothing left." The terrible truth, the survivors were struck dumb. For generations, humanity had searched for voices in the stars. They had dreamed of neighbors, of friends, of civilizations waiting to be found. But the truth was darker. The silence was not punishment. It was protection. Civilizations were not destroyed because they united. They were silenced because their voices risked awakening something far worse, something that even this being feared. Elias, his frail body shaking, whispered, "All this time, we thought we were alone. We were never alone. We were hidden." The survivors looked to the sky. The being pulsed above them, vast and incomprehensible, like a guardian and an executioner both. The choice. The voice spoke again. "Now you know. You have two paths. Remain silent and endure in shadow, or speak again and bring the end to all things." The survivors turned to one another, fear and confusion tearing through their hearts. Could they live forever in silence, never daring to call out? Could they give up music, laughter, voices raised together? Or should they defy the command, even if it meant awakening what lay beyond? Dr. Amina felt the eyes of the survivors on her. She, who had pressed the button, who had broken the silence, who had summoned the light. Her lips trembled as she looked to the dark horizon. In her chest, she still felt the rhythm of the galaxy's hidden heartbeat, and she realized something the being had not said. If the silence was broken once, it could be broken again. The light pulsed brighter, waiting. Humanity had been given a choice, and in that choice, their fate, and perhaps the fate of the galaxy, would be decided. Audience message: if this part gave you chills, please like, subscribe, and share your thoughts in the comments.